The House will come to order. Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is House File 1999. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 1999, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to state government, the second engrossment.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie, to explain House File 1999.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members, good afternoon. Mr. Speaker and members, off to a good start. In 2008, Minnesota voters voted to amend the Constitution and added sales tax of 3/8 of 1%. And this is the foundation of the Legacy Fund. So this bill and the 2023 Legacy Bill, over $823 million, invests in our natural resources, in the clean waters, in our parks and trails of Minnesota and cultural heritage. There's no other state that has this in the entire country that dedicates funds like this. And truly, we're an envy of other states all over the country. And polls still have this quite popular, at over 70% popularity rate with the voters. Minnesota's forests, prairies, and wetlands received nearly $127 million to restore, enhance, and protect them for future generations. Decades of overuse development have severely diminished the abundance of habitat and wildlife that were part of our state's landscape. Legacy funds are instrumental in saving our pollinators and providing habitat, vegetation, and even sequestering carbon. And they're just doing amazing things with restoring the habitat, prairies, and wetlands, and planting thousands of trees, greatly enhancing our great outdoors in Minnesota. With over 11,000 lakes, well past our 10,000 we hear about lakes, 92,000 miles of rivers and streams, Minnesota has more freshwater shoreland than any other state except for Alaska. The 2023 Legacy Bill invests $319 million, making sure our lakes and rivers and streams are safe for fishing and swimming, and making sure that we have a clean supply of drinking water. Through the pandemic, Minnesota has relied heavily on our parks and trails, safe places to exercise and connect with friends and family. There's over $136 million invested in this area. Just the Metro alone, there's over 60 million uses on the Metro Parks and Trails system. And you can see that the last couple of days as Minnesotans take the great opportunity to get outside and enjoy this new weather that we're seeing. We're investing significantly more in BIPOC and LGBTQIA organizations than in previous years in the legacy appropriations. And we're investing over $195 million in arts and cultural habitat, or arts and cultural heritage appropriations, and celebrating all of Minnesotans and getting to communities that we've not been able to get to in the past. So starting off in Article 1 of the bill is the outdoor heritage part of the bill. And this picks up $171 million of recommendations that came from mostly from the Lessard-Sams Council. Many of you, if you're not aware, the Lessard-Sams Council is a council that was set up, and they vet projects. As you can imagine, to get to this $171 million, they had over $360 million of requests, and they went through those and vetted them and decided on the projects that they were going to do. And so this is quite a process, and then they submit that to the legislature. There's over 121 million acres that are being projected, which is amazing when you really think about it, just in this one bill. 121 million acres, or 121,000, not million, acres. 80,000 of those are in our prairies part of the state. 13,000 are in the forest part of our state. 20,000 acres are within wetlands, and 7,000 are in the habitat. So, and there's also a great program that is a CPL program that reaches out to people that are smaller groups that might not have gotten access to these funds in the past, and that's up to about $9.5 million. I think Representative Fabian, some of you probably don't even know who he is, but he was real involved in Representative Hansen in starting that. And so on to Article 2, the Clean Water Council has recommendations, and this bill picks up many of the recommendations. The bill as it stands before you is $320 million in appropriations, and these are split essentially between several state agencies and go around Department of Agriculture, Pollution Control, Natural Resources, Soil and Water Conservation Districts. Bowser gets one of the biggest chunks doing these one watershed plans, $39 million. And there's some really amazing things in here. Hopefully you've taken a look at Amy's brief or our brief from our team on our side, from Molly. But there's also a great effort to work with farmers, efforts to reduce chloride, working with septic systems, so people that can't afford, and trying to help them to be compliant, and working, I already said, farmers. There's also some PFAS efforts in here and culverts and that sort of thing. Switching on to Article 3, which is the Parks and Trails part of the bill, is, like I mentioned earlier, it's broken down into 3 categories. So the Metro gets about $54 million in this bill. And again, that's reaching about 60 million users a year. And with that, you can imagine the wear and tear, and that's with all the systems. I heard or Chair Hornstein's bill this morning, and all the potholes, but it's the same with our trails. And we, to get people to keep using them, you want to make sure the quality is good. But we also partner with the Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails folks, and quite honestly, they're doing a great job of shotgunning parks and trails all over the state, and doing good work on that area. And the DNR, is getting $54 million, and again, this goes to their properties all over the state, and they're doing good work. You may have heard of the ICANN program, and that is funded through the legacy funds. And what that does is it gets people out in the outdoors that might not have been lucky enough to have a boat on their own or a kayak, and gets them out fishing and doing other things. We've added some new programming to create maybe a safe, not maybe, but a safe place for other people that have been left on the sidelines. So I'm really excited about that work. And so I think it's a strong effort in this Parks and Trails area, and we're also really focusing on trying to make it more accessible, because we know that a lot of Minnesotans are mobility challenged, and to work on that to make sure that they're more and more accessible for all Minnesotans. On to Article 4 is the arts and cultural part of the bill. And there's $195 million to celebrate our shared cultural history and support the arts. We increased funding for the regional arts councils who do some of the smaller grants. We added efforts to try to get to more youth throughout this bill, but certainly in the arts area, so we're really proud of that. We added money for increased education funding for the Arts Board for arts programs. In this bill, we fund libraries, county fairs in every one of your districts, libraries in every one of your districts, public broadcasting all over, including NPR and public TV, and also AMPERS, which covers so much of our state, and work with some of our Native American tribes and do some amazing programming all over the state. And I really hope that, I'm just going to step off my speech for a second, but that you take a look at some of the work that's done, because they have done amazing programming in all three of these areas that are telling the story of the legacy funds and the story of Minnesotans that are working in arts and other things. So the zoos of Minnesota are getting money, the Duluth and the one here at Como, and the big Minnesota Zoo. Wilderness Inquiry, again, that's a program that gets over 11,000 youth out in that have never been out in a canoe. I mean, think of what a game changer that can do for people to get on the water, and just to have that opportunity. Science museums. So there's competitive grants in here, and we also have the children's museums and the science museums. And also, we've incorporated a strong effort to have a strong position for children's museums all over the state of Minnesota, including some of the smaller ones to the biggest one in here in St. Paul. So the money, we're also trying to reach to do some capacity building, trying to get money to the people that have not received money in the past, because sometimes in this space, people have been left on the sidelines. And so we worked through the humanities, and there was over 167 different cultural groups that received my last biennium, and that was at $5 million, and we've almost tripled that. So we're hoping to greatly expand that and get that to grow into to be even a bolder and a bigger program. And I also included larger grants, because in that space, there's some groups that certainly could warrant more money. So we've added also some Hmong language preservation efforts in here. And we're also included all of the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council requests, language preservation, protecting graves, and burial mounds. I think Representative Erdahl has been a great leader in that space. I think this is a good bill. Our committee members have listened to state agencies, and we have made a very strong effort to make this a better bill, and to listen and to be to make Minnesota a much better place to live. We've increased education opportunities, increased free access. We were in Ways and Means today, and I think, or was that yesterday? It's all kind of a blur. But Chair Hansen and Representative Graffalo were going back and forth, but we've added free days all over in this bill, trying to get people access that typically haven't had access. But I think we have a good bill here that you can all go home and be proud of, and go to your voters and say that that you can. I think it'd be a proud bill for you to work on and vote for today. So with that, I'll stand for. I know we have some amendments, and with that, I'll stand for them and questions.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Farr moves to amend House Law number 1999, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A15.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from LeSueur, Representative Farr, to explain the A15 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chair Lillie. My first year on legacy, so I appreciate all that I've gotten to learn here. And so as I took a look at the bill and made some comparisons to past years, it was brought to my attention that this language was in the last year's, last biennium's legacy omnibus bill. And so it simply says, no grants awarded under this subdivision may be used for travel outside the state of Minnesota. I think this is a simple amendment, and I hope that you're willing to take this, Chair Lillie. I know there's been some discussion there. But again, a simple amendment, a common sense amendment.
Further discussion to the A15 amendment. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative, I think it is an amendment that we can work with. And it was in last year's bill. And my apologies to our team that I didn't know it was in last year's bill. And we have not heard back from Humanities that that's a problem. We do have some concerns, for people that live in border cities and everything. I was hoping that you might consider withdrawing and that we could work on it, but if not, then I guess I would encourage members to vote how they feel.
Mr. Speaker, I request a roll call.
Representative Farr has requested a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote on the A15 amendment. Representative Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we talked, or Chair Lillie talked significantly about the differences between previous omnibus bills, legacy omnibus bills, and this one. And so that's what we're talking about right here. We're talking about leaving the language in if you care to know, 107.2 in last biennium's legacy omnibus bill was this language. I would also like to draw your attention to this bill that's before us in lines 84.28. 84.28, this is the Minnesota, and that's under this is where I'm proposing the amendment. This is the Minnesota Humanities Center. It's not the South Dakota Humanities Center or the Florida Humanities Center. It's the Minnesota Humanities Center. So I think this makes sense. It's something we've done before, and so I would ask for a green vote.
Further discussion to the A15 amendment. Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the A15 amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 59 ayes and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Backer moves to amend House File Number 1999, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A14.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Traverse, Representative Backer, to explain the A14 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this amendment does is, in the bill right now, we have two different appropriations for children's museums. If you look on page 86, basically it says if a children's museum has an operation budget of over $3 million, they get a certain dollar amount. And if your operational budget under $1 million, you get a certain you get to go into a pool. And one of the things that the chair has done very well in this bill is really try to make it more of a grant process to be more inclusive. And that's what we're doing here. Because quite frankly, is we only have one children's museum that has a budget over greater than $3 million, which is St. Paul. And then all the other ones across the state of Minnesota, Mankato, Fergus Falls, Brainerd, and so many other ones are under that threshold. So what happens with this type of language, we're giving favoritism to one. And a child in Traverse County should be treated the same thing as a child in Ramsey County. And they should just go, my amendment just takes the money and puts it into one pool, a grant process for everybody. So that's all it does, because all those children museums should have the equal right and should go through that grant process based on the merit of an application and not a certain dollar amount of the budget, of their operating budget. And that's what my amendment does, is takes those two pools of money, puts it into one, so now all children's museums across the state has that same total amount access to that money. That's what my amendment does, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Lead Backer, thank you for your work on our committee this year. I think we have the same goal from trying to reach smaller organizations, and that's why we've kind of done it the way we've done it. So that was intentional, because we wanted to separate the bigger, quite honestly, the St. Paul, because if we were to add them in the matrix, it would just probably overwhelm many of the small ones. So we were quite intentional about to do what you're trying to achieve, to reach the small ones. So I'm just gonna ask members to vote no on the amendment, and I do pledge to you that I'll continue to work on this issue with you.
Further discussion to the A14 amendment. I recognize the author of the amendment, Representative Backer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I talk roll call, I would request a roll call.
Representative Backer requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote on the A14 amendment. Representative Backer.
And Chair, I would not disagree with you that it's going to be more challenging for smaller children's museums to, they don't have the staff like the St. Paul Museum. But one of the requests that we had of all the other children's museums is that they would get a certain allocation of $150,000. That was brought in front of the committee. We had a lively discussion about that. But how the bill is worded right now, St. Paul gets that appropriation because they're the only museum that has that type of a budget. So what's good for one museum should be good for all the museums. You know, we're one Minnesota. We hear that constantly. We're one Minnesota. What we're basically are saying with this here is, if you're not a certain size, then you go into a separate pool. But if you're a certain size, you're going to be earmarked. You're being earmarked because that museum, we only have one museum, is earmarked. So it provides favoritism for that one museum. The Children's Museum in Fergus Falls, those children who uses that, which has a huge regional, should have the same access to the same funds. Breckenridge is another one in my district. But we're saying to those families, because your size of your museum is not big enough, you don't get an earmark. So I respectfully would ask to support this amendment, because We're one Minnesota, and one child in greater Minnesota is the same thing as a child in the metro area and the suburban area. Thank you, members.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A14 amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 59 ayes and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Backer moves to amend House Bill number 1999, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A11.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Baker, to explain the A11 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is Baker and not Backer today, so thank you. I want to make sure that's clear, but that has happened a few times. So, members, thank you. I wanted to bring forward an important amendment to a group that I have worked with very closely since I arrived here in the Minnesota House back in 2015. The group Kajug is an important organization in the state of Minnesota. I have worked with them side by side with workforce issues, with substance use disorder, and their work is tireless in the especially the metro area, but they also are doing good work around the state of Minnesota. The FANCA program that should be identified in this bill, in my mind, is clearly missing. FANCA is their work towards cultural art and how they communicate with each other, and also how they communicate with us in the Western nation. These important citizens in Minnesota have contributed so much to us, but yet that culture is one, members, that we are still trying to understand because it's much different than many of us. My elders in my community, we talk about things that I really want to better understand, especially when it comes to, again, substance use disorder, the youth, elders, their culture is so much different. So, members, I'm asking that we take this amendment, A11, that allows this organization to have $2 million, $1 million each year, to focus in on the FANCA program. They, a couple years ago, did a statewide Chronicles of Diaspora, which was a play that they put together with funding that we did back in 2015. That, I think, was when Chair Erdahl chaired the Legacy Committee. And they went around the state of Minnesota and were communicating not only with their own community, but also ones that were trying to understand their culture, understand their ways of doing things that are different than us, whether it's religion, family dynamics, and they were communicating through arts. This unique FANCA program does something that nobody else does really in the state of Minnesota. They really do understand how to bridge communications through the arts. So I'm hoping, members, that we can accept this amendment today. This is a special organization, one that I'm super proud of. I have been spending the last 8 years of my time here to make sure my caucus knows how important this Kajug operation is and what they do on many levels in Minnesota here to bring us along to understand their culture in so many ways. So, members, I do hope that we can support this. I will wait to see how the chair will respond to this, if I ask for a roll call or not, but I do hope that this $2 million is looked at as incredibly important for that community that needs direct appropriation. And I know the other body has recognized this. They put money to this organization. So, members, I do hope you support the bill, the amendment A11 today. Thank you.
Further discussion to the A11 amendment. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Baker. I was told by the other one that you had a great name, except you were missing a C or something. He said he'd buy me coffee if I made that joke. It's not that funny, I guess. That's on you. No. You know, this is a great organization, and I'm glad you're working with them. And clearly, we've had them in and before our committee, and believe me, they touched our hearts. And they have been recipients, quite honestly, of legacy funds, and they're hoping to get more. And we're committed to that. And there is opportunities in our bill. Like I said, we've increased our cultural grants almost 3 times of what they were in previous bienniums. We were kind of hitting a wall across the street as far as how much we could fund that. And we have funded over 167 organizations. So we're a little leery of giving, 1/10 to one group. Not that it's a bad group, but I'm just a little bit, I think it needs to be thought out. This is an amazing group, clearly, and the outreach that they're doing of, our new Americans, new Minnesotans, and for all of us is incredible. But at this time, I just going to recommend that we vote no, and I think you'll be happy with the final bill as it comes through. And this group will, I'm strong belief they'll be in a strong position. Thank you.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I was hoping that we would be able to move this one through and show the House position when it moves into conference. Mr. Speaker, I do request a roll call on this
Representative
amendment.
Baker requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote on the A11 amendment. Representative Baker.
And just a quick final statement, Mr. Speaker and members. I don't want to make this go on too long, but again, I thought a really good article in the St. Cloud Times that was written back when the play, The Chronicles of Diaspora, was moving around the state. They said the idea behind the Chronicles of the play is that some issues that are tearing at the Somali community, the stresses of cultural integration, domestic violence, mental health, and drug abuse, are so taboo that they're not widely mentioned. So this is important to them. This is important to their understanding our culture with theirs. And again, I urge members that know that we can put this appropriation to this group in a very positive manner. Let's send it to conference with this statement. They need all of this dollars. This is a good organization. I really support. Members, again, final request for a green vote on the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The clerk will take the roll on the A11 amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 53 ayes and 73 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Heinzman moves to amend House Law number 1999, the second engrossment. The amendment was coded A17.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Crow Wing, Representative Heitzman, to explain the A17 amendment.
Thank you, Speaker. This amendment prohibits taxpayer dollars from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund from being used on projects that promote domestic terrorism or other criminal activities. Members that have been around here long enough can probably recall that there has been some issues in this subject area in the past. The one specific project that comes to mind is a video game. It became quite notorious, and I have a Detroit Lakes online story that we could talk about. But I'll just mention that this particular video game that was paid for with Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund money depicted the destruction of pipelines, bombing actually of pipelines, trucks, and refineries. We've had this amendment in the past. I think I might have even introduced it a time or two, but it just hasn't seemed to make it into the final language of the bill, so I'm working on trying to get this across the line today and would ask for members' support. Thank you. And I'd request a roll call, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Heisman requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote on the A17 amendment. Is there any further discussion to the A17 amendment? I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
I think it's unfortunate that we're playing or doing these type of amendments, but vote how you want.
Further discussion. I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Crow Wing, Representative Heisman.
Thank you, Speaker. No, I don't think this is playing at all. I think it's a very serious issue. I think the taxpayers expect that when legacy dollars are being distributed to projects, that they are projects that are very well deserving. Projects that depict violence, projects or proposals that depict acts of terrorism. I don't see people clamoring for that. I think that this is something that absolutely needs to be addressed, and once again would request a green vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A17 amendment. Members who wish to vote, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 80 ayes and 11 nays, the motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Heisman moves to amend House Law Number 1999, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A12.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Crow Wing, Representative Heisman, to explain the A12 amendment.
Thank you again, Speaker. This amendment prohibits arts and cultural heritage funds from being awarded to organizations that have had civil or criminal sexual assault or harassment judgments against them, or to organizations where the president, CEO, board member, or the like has held a similar position in an organization that had a sexual assault or harassment judgment against them in the past 24 months. The goal is simple. Organizations that are led by bad actors that allow this awful behavior and have judgments against them should not be able to apply for taxpayer dollars. Speaker, I would ask for a roll call on the amendment.
Representative Heitzman requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote on the A12 amendment. Representative Heitzman.
Thank you, Speaker. No, it's as I said, a very straightforward amendment, and I could go into more detail, and if we need to do that, I'm prepared to do so. I would continue to ask for a green vote of support.
Further discussion to the A12 amendment. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Again, it's sad to me. No one wants money to go to offenders, but vote how you members vote how you feel.
I recognize the author of the amendment, Representative Heitzman.
Thank you, Speaker. And just once again, this is about accountability. This is about being a steward of the taxpayers' dollars and holding organizations and their members to the highest level. That's why I proposed the amendment today and would appreciate your support.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A12 amendment. Members who wish to vote, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 77 ayes and 13 nays, the motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended.
Third reading, House Bill number 1999, as amended.
Third reading as amended. Discussion to House File 1999. I recognize the member from Meeker, Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And I'm not going to talk a real long time here, but I'm going to give a little bit of a history lesson today. I've been involved with the Legacy Committee before it was the Legacy Committee. It's called the Heritage Committee once with Representative Yaros, 2008. And so up until this year, I've been associated with the Legacy Committee. This is the first time I've not been on it. And so I'm well acquainted with a lot of the struggles that our chairs and our committees have gone through over the years. You think it would be easy to appropriate $600, $700, $800 million. You'd think it would be easy, wouldn't you? But it's not so easy. It never has been. Well, Representative Gunther did get a bill through once, 134 to nothing. And then we had Representative Kahn chairing, Representative Murphy chairing. They had some ups and downs, but usually got bills passed with good margins. I had 2 tours of duty as chair of the committee. We dealt with the percentages for the arts, for parks. We set those. We dealt with the continual discussion about supplant versus supplement. Administrative costs, those were big problems. I can remember finishing a bill. It passed committee. And I'm walking in, we were obviously in in charge then. I walked to the fourth floor corner, and the majority leader accosted me a little bit and said, you know that bill you just passed in committee? And I said, yeah. He said, well, there's some problems with it. Do it over again. I said, what do you want me to do? He said, I don't know, fix it. We got problems. And so we fixed it. And we passed it and, you know, got some good things. And then, here's something that might be news to you guys. Sometimes caucuses play games with bills. And the second tour of duty as chair, the bill came up before the floor. It was the last day of session. This is final passage. And in negotiations, I knew there were a couple of problems, and I had talked to the Senate negotiators about doing away with those problems, and they assured me that they were taken out of the bill. And then I get to the floor, and lo and behold, members from the other side of the aisle are pointing out to me that those two items that the Senate had told me were gone had simply been moved to another part of the bill. This created a problem for me. And so someone moved that we should send the bill back to conference committee. Keeping in mind, this is the last day of the session, and we're going to go to conference committee. Well, as a good chair does, I argued fervently against sending the bill to conference committee. And then I realized in the middle of the debate that they were right. We needed to go to conference committee. And so we did. We went over to the Senate, and the Senate refused to talk to us. And so I came back and said, no agreement with the Senate, could we move it back? And by a vote of 69 to 65, the bill came back. And then you guys filibustered it the rest of the day. We didn't get a legacy bill that year because my good friends, and I think Representative Hornstein, you probably were part of this, filibustered until the end of session. And then we came back in special session. And by the way, no bill passed that year. And we had to come back in special session. And the problems that we had were fixed in 15 minutes and passed in special session. So thank you very much. What I'm trying to do today is just talk a little bit about, again, the history and the trials and tribulations of dealing with this committee, which, again, one would think would be easy to do, but it's not. And so, with that said, I do commend Representative Lillie for his diligent work on this bill. I have a few things in there, maybe could be a little bit better, but he's done a good, diligent job of trying to put together a good bill for something that should be easy, but frankly isn't. Thank you.
Further discussion to House File 1999. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Herr.
Thank you, Speaker. I wanted to just take a quick opportunity to talk about the work that was done in Legacy. I know that not everybody was happy. There was a lot of direct appropriations were taken out of this bill. But I wanted to just say quickly that I've never been in Legacy before. This was my first time. And when I joined Legacy, it was when I was put on this committee, it was really important for me to learn why the committee does what it does. I didn't want to specifically look at who's getting funded and why, but I wanted to understand statutorily what is our responsibility. And why do we give some people direct appropriations and why do we not give others? And to me, when we get to choose winners and losers, generally the losers are organizations and people who don't understand systems and structures and how to navigate them. People have been traditionally excluded in the past. And so my whole involvement in this legacy work was to really work closely with Chair Lillie to say, what can we do and what is the community saying to us? And so I met a number of times with community organizations in the arts and also in Parks and Trails. Those who, I met with Parks and Trails to say, well, who comes to your parks? And when we give this money, who gets the benefit from it, and who comes? And how do we ensure that we track that people from low-income communities get to use how we're funding this? And people who might not have transportation issues, they may have transportation issues, how do they get out in order to use some of these parks and trails? And everybody was extremely helpful in wanting to do right by people. And everyone was willing to make changes. And when I met with arts organizations, and I met with large arts organizations, really small ones, BIPOC organizations, and I asked them, well, what do you need? What do you want? And many of them said, there are a lot of things happening in community now that when there is some kind of event such as, like at Harding High School when there was a stabbing of a student, we call the arts community to come in to heal community. When there are issues within communities that are generational and impacts them, we say, well, how does arts heal people? But they don't get any funding to do that kind of work. And so when I talked to Chair Lillie about how do we deal with emerging events within our communities, how can we deal with that? Chair Lillie said, well, let's put some funds into this because people shouldn't be expending their own resources, and when they're doing work that benefits the entire community, we should fund that work. And so there's a pot of money in here, a small amount, in order to help communities address emerging issues within those communities and how to heal and how to support communities during times of trauma and difficulties. I also was really thankful for Chair Lillie for for creating pots of fund for small nonprofits, saying, we're too small to have our own grant writers to continue to pursue funding. We always lose to the larger organizations. And so we need capacity building. And so there was some money put into there for capacity building, and this generally impacts small organizations and BIPOC-led organizations. And so I was really happy to see some of these changes that we made to say, how do we change ourselves structurally so that we become more accessible to other people? I also want to point out that there is a pool of fund in there that we've never had before for the LGBTQ plus community, in which we've never looked at that and said, we should absolutely be supporting the work within these communities. And so I wanted to just say that sometimes some of these things get overlooked by the larger pools of funds that are allocated. But I do want to just point out that these are really important funds that actually really will have great impact on our communities. And I want to just last say that Chair Lillie really empowered us as members to actually work directly with the Humanities Centers, all of the organizations which get money in order to grant out. And that if we want structural change, we have to actually go to the organizations that are giving out this money so that we're not the ones picking winners and losers. They're the ones that are in community, talking to organizations, vetting organizations, and so allowing us to actually do our job and saying we don't just pass laws, but we actually hold entities accountable for the money that we give them. And so I just wanted to say that there was a lot of work that went into this bill. Not everybody is happy because there were people who got direct appropriations in the past that did not get them. Organizations I cared about that I wanted to have direct appropriations to did not get them either. And so I want us to all know that as we are looking at this bill and saying, well, why did certain things not happen the way they have in the past, is that it was an attempt in order for us to be more fair and equitable in how we do this work. So I just want to say I was really proud of the work that we did do and what we were able to put together in this bill, and thank Chair Lillie for the work.
Further discussion of House File 1999. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Hussein.
Thank you. This bill is a great bill, and we are investing in Minnesota to improve outdoor heritage, clean water. This has been a fun legacy, and I want to thank Chair Lillie for the great work that you have done to address and invest for our young generations, make sure that they learn in cultural, and we're trying to address that, the whole state of Minnesota. This is a really great bill. Minnesota has a rich history when it comes to cultural, and we want to make sure that we are investing clean water, make sure that our kids can swim at clean lakes and clean rivers. I'll ask both of my colleagues to support this great bill, and we're trying to address the Minnesota what they deserve as a legacy vice chair. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, this is really a great bill. I just want to give a shout out to you, Representative Lillie, for doing the good work to keep our water clean and to accept the recommendations of the Clean Water Council. There is nothing more precious to the human body than water. we must all have clean water to drink. And this provides protection for our wellheads. This provides protection for our rivers and streams. And I'm particularly grateful for your inclusion of the Forever Green provision. It's how we met when I first came to the legislature, and I just thank you for your continued support of these recommendations. There is something in this bill for everyone, no matter where you live in the state of Minnesota. This is truly a One Minnesota bill. Thank you for your commitment to the arts. Thank you for your commitment to our outdoor heritage. And thank you for supporting our clean water. I tip my hand to you. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Traverse, Representative Backer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would have to say this is a fun committee. Vice Chair summed it up. It is fun. The Chair, we can poke fun, and at the same time, we have serious business. You know, this bill spends $860 million. It's a lot of money, and enjoyed the debate that we had from both sides of the aisle. I do want to take a shout out and thank the committee members on both sides of the aisle, the staff on both sides of the aisle, but of course, Amy Zipcode on our side, she makes us look a whole lot better than what we are. And I know that's the same thing with Mike on the other side too. So really appreciate that. And just working together. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Thank you for our discussion today. First off, I just really want to thank our staff. You know, we have some amazing nonpartisan staff in this building. We are so blessed. Mary Davis, Helen Roberts, Janelle Taylor, Brad Hagemeyer. We're kind of focused on our area. I feel sorry for the rest of you because we have the best. They're just amazing. We're so lucky to have them. And just mention Amy Zipko on the GOP side. She did good work and sometimes too good a work. But maybe today, no. Anyways, no. Thank you, Amy, for your work. And of course, I want to thank my CLA, Madison Priestley. Thank you very much for your hard work and setting up the appointments and everything that it takes to run a committee like this. And certainly Mike Molzon is great. And Molly Peterson, just a fantastic researcher. We're just really blessed. So thank you. And thank you to the committee members. You know, we did have, I thought, really a great discussion. Yeah, we had some really fun days. We had the zoos come in, and we had the fun stuff that you do with that, or, you know, the Wilderness Inquiry came in, and it wasn't quite as fun as the year we had Jay in a boat, but Chair Zhang, I don't know where he is, but we had him in a life jacket and a canoe one year. That was special. But we didn't have that this year. But anyways, you know, we had a lot of fun. But we also had serious discussion and try to use these funds wisely because it is such a blessing. We are so blessed to have this as a state. And when I first started, I meant this sincerely. We're other states are really jealous. But this is, I almost call this sacred money in a way because the voters proved this in a ballot. And so when I say to you, we did take this money serious. And the thing that we are doing different, though, a little bit, than we're trying to reach a lot of the new citizens, a lot of our new neighbors. And we're really leaning into that. Or some of the people that might have felt left on the side. So we're trying to make it so people can get access to the grants and do that. You know, a lot of the fingerprints that are in here are Chair Erdahl's and my previous chairs. Thank you for your leadership on this. And he's always kicking me in the side or pushing me to do good things or stay out of trouble. But anyways, again, thank you to all the members that are on the committee. I really was lucky to have such a strong committee. And I'm really proud of the work. this is really a popular thing in Minnesota. 70%, when I first started, I said that, of voters approve this. And still to this day. And, we're in about the 15th year of a 25-year deal. And so we're well positioned. And I think I can look all you in the face and say that we are being good stewards of this money. We are looking at it. We're looking at it, and we're making sure that these monies go out. And they go all over Minnesota. There's land buying all over in improvements in everyone's districts, all over the state of Minnesota. Libraries, just on and on. County fairs, just on it. These investments, if you can't win a campaign on this stuff, I've said this before, you are a terrible politician. Because there's something in here that you can win. There's arts projects that are in your local districts that are doing amazing work. Again, I thank you for hearing this bill today. We're going to go to conference committee, and we're going to duke it out with those tough senators. I'm looking forward to that. Again, I appreciate your time today. I would challenge you to vote green today. This is really good for Minnesota, and we are taking this money serious, and we are good stewards, all of us, our committee, and all of us members. It's work that you all can be proud of.
Further discussion to House File 1999. I recognize the member from Stearns, the Minority Leader, Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And today, members, I appreciate the discussion and the opportunity that we've had as we've looked forward to this bill. Two of the things that I am very pleased with is the inclusion on this bill of the two amendments. The first one, Amendment A12, and that is to prohibit arts and cultural heritage fund dollars from being awarded to an organization who has had a civil or criminal sexual assault harassment judgment within the last 24 months, or any organization where the CEO, executive board member, or others has held a similar position in an organization that has had a sexual harassment or assault judgment within the last 24 months. That was the right decision to vote yes on that and to have that included in the bill. The second amendment that I was very pleased to see go on was the A17 that would prohibit funding from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund from being used on projects that promote domestic terrorism or criminal activities. Those were the right decisions for Minnesotans. Those were the right decisions to make sure that our tax dollars are not going to fund criminals. Unfortunately, the way that this bill has come together has grave concerns. And with that, our caucus will be voting no today. And Mr. Speaker, I would request a call of the House.
Representative Demuth requests a call of the House.
And I would request a roll call.
Seeing 10 hands, the clerk will take the roll.
watched a little bit. I'm like,
Yeah, I didn't watch it. It's kind of funny though because like the humor, it's good. And they're all so I was like,
you're way down.
The clerk will close the roll. Further discussion to House File 1999. I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Leader Damath, for getting members in their seats a little earlier so they could hear my third reading speech. I appreciate it a lot. Members, Minnesotans value our state's parks and trails, our arts, our cultural heritage, and our clean water. And that's why, as Chair Lillie mentioned, we voted in 2008 to raise the revenue ourselves overwhelmingly to make sure that we are funding these in a sustained and dedicated way into the future. The Legacy Amendment, when it passed, was both the largest state conservation member and the largest arts funding measure in United States history. And that should make us really proud. I know that I benefit greatly from this when my kids and my family go out and we see that legacy sign, whether it's a museum or a park or an art display, and I can just get a jolt of pride knowing that that is something that we paid for collectively, that that's something that we stepped up as a state and decided was something that we wanted to make sure this was a state that was better for us all to live in, to work in, to play in. And I'm especially proud that this bill today, that the Legacy Committee members and that Chair Lillie worked very hard to make sure that it is making the funding more accessible to those who have oftentimes been left behind in getting legacy funding. It more than doubles the amount of funding for cultural identity grants to BIPOC and LGBTQ organizations, and it makes sure that each fund contains requirements that anyone who receives a grant has to show how funds are being used to reach diverse communities. And for the first time ever, the legacy funds are investing $1.5 million in capacity building for small organizations that have historically lacked resources to submit grant applications or try to get funding in other ways. Members, the things in these bills are not partisan and not political. It is funding projects across the state. It doesn't matter if you're in a rural part of our state, the urban part of our state. We're funding efforts to protect wildlife habitat in Hennepin County, but we're also restoring fisheries in Aiken, Cass, and Crow Wing and Hubbard counties. We're doing shoreline protection for turtle habitat in Lake Nokomis in my city of Minneapolis, but we're also restoring prairie in Martin and Martin County. There's no reason we can't pass this bill today with an overwhelming bipartisan support, just like we had when voters voted on this in 2008 in overwhelming margins. Minnesotans understand that you get what you pay for, and Minnesotans value paying to protect the outdoors and to enrich our lives through arts and cultural heritage. This bill is about what makes it so special to be a Minnesotan, to live in this state, to raise families in this state, to work in this state. And this bill in particular is a transformational bill that can make our state an even better place to live and work. So I want to thank Chair Lillie and the Legacy Committee for your hard work putting this budget today. Every member in this chamber should be voting green. Thank you.
The clerk will take the roll on House File 1999. The House is under call. Members, please vote. Members, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 69 ayes and 59 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Long.
I move that the call of the House be lifted.
Representative Long moves that further proceedings under the roll call be Representative Long moves that the call of the House be lifted. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails and the call of the House is lifted. Announcements by the Speaker.
Announcement by the Speaker. A message from the Senate has been received requesting concurrence by the House to amendments adopted by the Senate to the following House file. House File number 42.
Calendar for the day. The next bill on the calendar for today is House File 2073. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 2073, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to higher education, the second engrossment.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski, to explain House File 2073.
Mr. Speaker and members, House File 2073 makes the largest investment in higher education in my 37 years in the House of Representatives. And it's at a particularly good time. We have, over the past decade, abused tuition to the point where we have used the students as banks. And every fiscal year, we will say we can put on their backs 3.5% or more in tuition increases. And we've reached a point where the students have said and the parents have said, it's enough. This bill will freeze tuition in the Mid-State system for 2 years, and we'll pay for it. This bill provides the University of Minnesota with $48 million over the biennium to address one-time funding issues. This bill, for the first time ever, takes one-time funding of $50 million and campus by campus in the Mid-State system addresses a deficit that has been ongoing on those campuses for the better part of a decade. This bill provides $1 million per year for each of the 3 tribal colleges. It also provides money for the University of Minnesota's system-wide safety and security issues, and it provides an additional $2 million over the base for those issues. Mr. Speaker and members, I know there are amendments at the desk, and why don't we go to the amendments?
There are amendments at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
O'Neill moves to amend House Law number 2073, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A8.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Wright, Representative O'Neill, to explain the A8 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I want to take you back to a fall day just before Halloween. Senator Rarick and I and Senator Dietzich, 3 of the 1 former regent and 2 current regents, and a whole group of very, very concerned parents decided to go on a safety walk. We were on the University of Minnesota campus. We started in Dinkytown. And as we gathered, the person that was in charge of the safety walk said, I just need to let you know that 20 minutes ago, a student was robbed at gunpoint and pistol whipped 20 minutes ago. Now, anybody that watches the Twitter feeds for crime watches, there's several out there, or actually have a student that's at the U and you're a parent, will see alerts, and you'll see the things happening over and over and over and over again at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus. And I had a parent tell me recently in a meeting, his son was so terrified that every day when he made it back to his dorm room, he was so thankful he was still alive. Still thankful he was still alive. That was his words. Now, as we're on this safety walk, and we were just told that somebody was just pistol whipped, and of course we had security all around us. The students don't have that kind of security like we did. And we were walking with 2 current regents and 1 former regent. We had 2 state senators. Actually, we had a sheriff that was trying to find the group, and I don't think he ever caught up with us. And as we're going through, we stopped at one of these little cute little houses, and outside of this house were a whole bunch of U of M students. And they told us that they were from Stillwater. And they started to tell us about how terrified they were just that night. And we said, well, what happened? And they said, we were out walking around because it was the weekend before Halloween. And there were kids everywhere. There were college students everywhere. And he says, well, we're all from Stillwater. We all live in this house behind us. And they started shooting fireworks at us out of cars and, different places. And he goes, I couldn't believe it. They were shooting fireworks at us. Now, jump ahead the next night if you were watching those Twitter feeds. And there was a fraternity house, I think it was, a fraternity house that a group of young men decided it would be funny to pitch some fireworks into the fraternity house. and it went off and somebody got hurt and had to go to the hospital. Now that was just in 2 nights, one night when I was there and the next night. There is a lot of crime, there's a lot of terrified students. And what this amendment does, the A8, it extends what we're doing in this bill, the $5 million per year for safety and security at the University of Minnesota, and it extends it out into the tails. Because right now there's $2 million per year in the tails, and this would extend it to 5. I couldn't think of any better way to spend this money, spending the surplus, than to make sure that the students at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus are actually safe. They can hire more law enforcement, which they're in the process of doing. They can make the Marcy Holmes neighborhood, which we walked through, which was pitch dark, maybe a little bit brighter so that there's a little light on what's happening there, and a whole bunch of other safety measures that they're talking about doing. So, Mr. Speaker and members, that is what the A8 does.
Further discussion to the A8 amendment. I recognize the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski.
Mr. Speaker and members, I would ask that the body adopt the amendment.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Knorr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the chair for allowing the increase of the safety funds for the University of Minnesota. Members, I just wanted to make sure that I put the record straight. I don't need security to be walking in my neighborhood. A place that I'm raising my 4 young kids, a place that I call home. You know, when we portray that it's unsafe, a place where the students cannot come, that's the notion that many people will keep on saying. Unfortunately, we tend to believe that it's a place that no one can go to. The neighborhood surrounding me and the neighborhood that I live in, it's within the University of Minnesota. It's in my district. Yes, we do have safety concerns and challenges. Yes, we do have all the issues that many people will read in the paper and many other places. But no, it's not a place that people cannot leave. It's a place we call home. It's a place we raise our kids. It's a place where our students go to college. What we need to do is to figure out how best to support the students, how best to support my neighbors across the University of Minnesota. Not only the students, it applies to everyone who lives around the University of Minnesota. So I just wanted to caution this body not to portray that area as being unsafe, a place where the students cannot come to, and to continue to support the students so that they understand we're there for them. Unfortunately, the same body that we're in here, when last session we had almost $100 million that turned into $10 million, and it was denied by the other side. So saying that we don't support student safety is not true, and we want to continue to do that. I just wanted to respectfully say that when we talk about my neighborhood, when you talk about my district, please make sure that you portray it the way it is right now. That's the place that I live. So thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion to the A8 amendment. I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And thank you, Representative Knorr, for sharing that. And, you know, we actually got to travel to a foreign country together and spent some great time together. I appreciate that. I respect you. I respect where you live. And I want your area to be safe. I want students to be safe. And I would just say that nothing happened last session, right? So all of the bills, all of the things that we wanted, nothing happened. And that wasn't just an us versus them, that was a we thing. So I just want to be clear that, yes, there was $100 million for safety and security, and absolutely no bills passed last session. So let's just be clear. So, and I would say that, again, I was talking about just 2 days that I was very intimately involved with. I was there watching, listening, and I do watch the Twitter feeds of the crime watches. There are several for the Twin Cities area. And one has to just look at, there's all kinds of data out there to show you what it looks like in all of Minneapolis and St. Paul. I believe St. Paul just had their 10th or 11th murder, so it happens here too. I'm not saying that there was a murder on the campus, but I'm just saying there are safety issues across Minneapolis and St. Paul. So I thank you for that, and I would ask you to support the amendment.
All those in favor of adopting the A8 amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Robbins moves to amend House Law number 2073, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A4.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins, to explain the A4 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This amendment simply provides money for a study to right size, to see if we need to right size. I'm not saying we necessarily do, but we need to study whether or not, given the ongoing enrollment challenges, that we are adequately and strategically funding what's going on both in the MnSCU system and the University of Minnesota. We have an incredible higher ed system here, and it has been a privilege for me to be on the committee this year. I can't say enough about how much I respect Chair Pelowski's leadership and what we have learned as we have met with the U and the MnSCU system. And I'm so proud of our university system and the MnSCU system. We have a world-class education here. But the reality is, not just for COVID years, but for the past 10 years, members, we have had a very significant decline in enrollment in both systems. In the last 10 years, enrollment in both systems has declined 27.9%. So members, this is a serious thing that we will see ongoing challenges for. And rather than just ignore it or put a Band-Aid on it, like we are having to do this year, we need to have a long-term study done about where enrollment is going and how we can adjust accordingly to fulfill the mission of the University of Minnesota and the MnSCU system. We want to keep our campuses strong. We want to keep our programs strong. We want to continue to have excellent research that draws faculty and students here from around the world. But in order to do that, we have to face the demographic realities. So for 10 years, enrollment has been declining. Currently, the University of Minnesota serves about 69,000 students on 5 campuses. The MnSCU system serves 300,000 students on 54 campuses. Members, I would just submit to you that given that not only are enrollment trends for the past 10 years on the decline, but we have been told by the state demographer that we are going to have a serious enrollment cliff in 2025. We have to prepare for that, and we have to make sure that our system is well funded in the right areas. So the amendment just is a $100,000 study, and I would ask for a roll call on this, members.
Representative Robbins requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote on the A4 amendment. Further discussion to the amendment. I recognize the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski.
Mr. Speaker, members, I would ask that the members vote against the amendment. Before there was the Office of Higher Ed, there was the Higher Education Service Office. The current chair of higher education was instrumental in repealing it. Before there was a Higher Education Service Office, there was the Higher Education Commission Board. The current chair of higher education was instrumental in repealing it. And with the creation of the Office of Higher Ed, the current chair of higher education was also instrumental in creating it. The language that Representative Robbins has is core to the mission of the Office of Higher Ed. We don't have to pass an amendment to get this information. We simply have to ask the Office of Higher Ed for it. So there would be, and I can encourage Representative Robbins to pursue it, but in the interim hearings that we're going to have over the summer and into the fall, we'll be looking into this, and the Office of Higher Ed will be providing it without an amendment.
Further discussion to the A4 amendment. I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chair Pelowski. I do appreciate that, but I would just submit to the body that we often don't get the data or the specific things that we would like from the administration, and I see a lot of the times that we request in statute studies. And the current bill, in fact, has a study, a $75,000 study that OHE will do to explore opportunities to establish statewide volunteer opportunities for students in higher ed education institutions. Members, if we're going to spend $75,000 on a study to explore volunteer opportunities, I think it is much more prudent that we instead direct OHE to do a study on how we right-size the university to meet the enrollment declines we are facing. And I would also submit that we just passed out this article from March 22nd where the Star Tribune also advocated for taking a look at how we can streamline things at the university and make sure that we are funneling our dollars, taxpayer dollars, so that we are effectively fulfilling the mission. So members, I appreciate it, and I would just love to say that with a 18.5% increase in this budget, in this bill for the biennium, we absolutely need a study like this. Thank you.
Further discussion. I recognize the member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Robbins. I just want to point out, members, that the total spending in this bill is almost $1 billion. Is it over $1 billion or barely? I think it is over $1 billion. $1 billion that we're putting into higher education. And frankly, higher education in the state of Minnesota is in a death spiral. 30% enrollment. These are not small numbers. This is not a trifling statistic. 30% of our enrollment, and this predates COVID, this predates pandemic and shutdowns and lockdowns. It predates all of that. 30%. This is a death spiral, and as a legislature, we are advocating, or we are appropriating over $1 billion to higher education. The least we can do for the taxpayers of the state of Minnesota is understand what is happening. Oh, I'm sorry, $4 billion. $4 billion with a B. And we can't spend $100,000 to figure out what is happening? What's the solution, my Democrat colleagues? What is the solution? Are we just going to continue year after year after year pouring billions of dollars into a system that is in a death spiral? This is bonkers. This is the easiest yes vote of the day. My goodness, $100,000 to figure out why higher education in the state of Minnesota is in a death spiral when we are spending $4 billion to prop it up. My goodness, vote yes, members.
Further discussion to the A4 amendment. I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it was a pleasure for me to serve for the first time on the Higher Ed Committee this session, and I really did enjoy my time there and learned a lot. And I do remember the chair talking about getting to the bottom of declining enrollment, so I'm a little bit curious why we're not seeing, I never actually heard the words uttered that we were going to ask the department to do that. I'm glad to hear that him say that possibly that's going to happen during the interim. But members, the declining enrollment issue is happening across the country. It isn't unique to our system. So lest you think that we're just pointing to Minnesota's higher ed infrastructure, our higher ed, that is not the case. This is happening all over the country. And states all over the country that are responsible are going to be looking at this and seeing what the trends are. We have declining high school and elementary enrollment in most places. We're going to continue to see lower enrollment in higher ed as well. And we need to get to the bottom not only of, and the demographic isn't the only reason for the decline. There are other reasons too, but let's get to the bottom of it. And let's do the right thing. Let's find the efficiencies. Have a study done that said this is how we can streamline. As we all know, sitting on the Higher Ed Committee, we talked a lot about administrative costs. And this would get to the bottom of some of those administrative costs too. Because the more programs you have that are with lower enrollment, you're spending disproportionately more on administration and less goes toward helping the student on an individual basis. So let's look at this study. It's what, 0.04% of, I think that's the math, maybe it's 0.004% of the $4 billion budget for higher ed. But, you know, let's not just always throw money at a situation. Let's look at how we can find efficiencies. Thank you, Representative Robbins, for bringing this amendment. I think it's really important, and I encourage a green vote.
I recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not only this bill that the study would help. It's very often we'll spend a couple $100 million on infrastructure, facilities, buildings, upgrading, maintenance, and et cetera, across the system. And if we don't understand the utilization, it's probably because we don't understand the enrollment, future utilization, and et cetera. This study leverages in multiple areas and could save us from spending hundreds of millions of dollars on things that aren't going to be utilized. So I think it's just prudent and intelligent. Let's get information.
I recognize the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski.
Mr. Speaker and members, I'm going to go back to the Robbins Amendment, and then I'm going to remind the members not only of those who are on the committee, but the House. The Higher Education Committee of the Minnesota House spent 2 months studying budgets, not bills. Not one bill was heard. And all of those requests, including those to the Office of Higher Ed, were met. If you recall, members who were on the committee requested a 10-year breakdown by campus of the Min-State system, by campus of the University of Minnesota system, by campus of the private college system, the declining enrollment from 2013 until this year. A corollary request was then made of the deficits by campus of each campus in the Min-State system, and then the tuition increases at the University of Minnesota and in other entities. This is a fascinating amendment because we're already doing it. We're doing it because we had the information in January and February, and we're going to pursue it now over the interim in regards to this bill. But I also want to remind the members of one theme we had in January and February. You grab them by the budgets, and you don't let go. Vote against the amendment.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members, for the discussion. I do appreciate Chair Pelowski's wonderful leadership and all the data that he did request to the committee. But I have to say, members, that when we would question the witnesses, the testifiers in the committee, they weren't very forthcoming on what they were going to do to address the reality of these enrollment challenges. And to Representative Quam's point, there are significant investments outside of this bill. The capital request for the University of Minnesota was $371 million, and the capital request for MnSCU is $349 million. And so, members, what happened this year in committee is that the University of Minnesota and MnSCU came to us with a budget request, and then they got more data. And they realized how deep the enrollment decline was, and their own projections were wrong. And then they came with a supplemental budget request, and that's why we are at this 18.5% increase. We cannot just be reactionary every time some new enrollment challenge happens or some other issue goes on at a campus. We need to be much more strategic and global in how we are looking at how we are going to invest in public education for the next 10 years. And so, members, this study is common sense. It's much more important than the study currently in the bill for $75,000 on student volunteer opportunities, although I support that. This is a much more long-term important study, and I urge a green vote. Thank you.
The clerk will take the roll on the A4 amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 58 ayes and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Nash moves to amend House File Number 2073, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A6.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Carver, Representative Nash, to explain the A6 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move the A6 and would request a roll call.
Representative Nash requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote on the A6 amendment. Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the chair of the Higher Ed Committee, I deeply respect the move that you made. I think it was 10 years ago in addressing some of the compensation issues relative to folks at the U. Members, this amendment would cap the president of the University of Minnesota's salary at 350% of the governor's salary. Now, that's a big number, and since the letter of the day, if it's Sesame Street, is B, as in bonkers, what we've seen recently in the compensation package relative to the president is that she has been rewarded quite well. And having been a senior VP of sales and having a variable compensation, my compensation and others who have been CEOs or presidents, I know that success is one of the metrics. And as we've heard a number of times, enrollment is declining, and that's not a metric of success. So I think a lot of us were really astounded when we saw the increase of the salary and then the announcement of the next year's increase of a salary and then the bonus. And Chair Pelowski, I really appreciate the willingness to work on this. I think this is important. I think that the message that is sent in this to the people who are possibly sending their kids to the U or considering sending their kids to the U is that the legislature is going to take a look at this and possibly intervene where the regents may not have. And I know from talking to the chair that he's willing to talk about this, the interim hearings, and I don't know when that is, but I look forward to that opportunity. Members, this is a really good amendment. I think that, once again, it sends a message to people who are evaluating colleges right now, and I have several children who are looking at that, and if this increase in salary or this current salary is carried forward, that's going to do nothing but raise the cost of tuition to folks who are going to consume those services. So I want to make sure that we're doing our diligence here at the legislature and that we can move this forward, and I would appreciate your support and your green vote.
Discussion to the A6 amendment. I recognize the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski.
Representative Nash, I'm intrigued by your amendment because it's true, 10 years ago, we did a deep dive on the administrative salaries of all of higher education, and we prevented bonuses. We also put in what we hoped would have been limits to increases in administrative salaries. And I can promise you that over the interim, we will be looking at it again because performance is going to have to be part of the package that we're going to hopefully pass today on the House floor. I like the amendment, but I would encourage that we not do this on the House floor. We do it in committee, and I know Representative Nash, as a process person, would agree with me on that. So members, please vote no.
Further discussion to the A6 amendment. I recognize the member from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, thank you, Chair Pelowski. I also deeply respect you. I appreciate the fact that you bring all kinds of experience. You even brought this amazing budget binder that you had from, I think it was the 80s. You really have done a fantastic job. And I'm excited to hear that we're going to have interim hearings and we're going to address this issue because it certainly has gotten out of control, Representative Nash. It is unbelievable. And you, I don't know if you said this, but the current president is actually on her way out now and is going to be going on to a different university. But there's still a question, even now, is she going to get her retention bonus as she's leaving? Yeah, I did say that, to get her retention bonus as she's leaving. So all of these questions are up in the air, and I would like some clarity. I hope that we support this amendment, and I appreciate the process argument, Chair Pelowski, because, you know, I'm a policy and process person as well. But if we took this amendment, it certainly would send a very strong message to an outgoing president, any incoming interim presidents at the University of Minnesota, and the entire Regent Board, who quite frankly need to take a more active role in the work that they do there, and not just take whatever the administration gives them and moves forward with it, which from my look of it kind of looks like what they do on occasion. So I would hope that we would accept this amendment, we would have a robust discussion, that we would also have interim hearings. I'm very excited about that, to take a look at that. You know, it's interesting, the last thing I would say about this amendment is the outgoing president, what she said as she was leaving is, well, I'll tell you two things. So I was actually in the Regent meeting when she got the approval for her salary increase. And it was said, well, she was at the bottom of the Big Ten, which is really not 10, as you know, schools, that she was at the bottom. So they raised it up. And then guess what happened? Do you know what happened? Across the Big Ten, salaries went up, and she was at the bottom again. So when she got her increase in the middle of her contract, no less, in the middle of her contract, it was renegotiated to put her in the middle of the Big Ten pack. By the time she was outgoing, which was just a little over a year later, she was back at the bottom because all these other salaries keep going up and up and up and up. So I appreciate that, because Minnesota could be a leader in the Big Ten, if not the nation, on how we pay the salaries. And maybe they would start to come down. So I encourage you to vote yes on this amendment.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker, and Chair Pelowski, I do appreciate that. You know, I don't know if you know this, but I actually serve as a trustee on a college board, and this is something that we evaluate as we're talking about our own president's compensation is, did you do the job well? Did we succeed? And that's an equation. I talk a lot about equations. That's the delightfully nerdy side of me, but it should be something that is factored in, and there should be a restraint set at the very beginning so that you do have room to make a change based on performance. But after a while, it sort of feels like Monopoly money, right? I mean, we all probably have played Monopoly. It's one of my favorite games, and my family refuses to play with me because apparently I like to win a lot, but I take the fun out of it, they say. But it feels like you just sort of reach into that stack of 500s and you just pick up this paw full of Monopoly money and sprinkle it around. And there has to be some restraint. And so to the chair, I appreciate the conversation we had in Ways and Means when you brought this, and that was my question. And I think after you stopped giggling, that was when you said, yeah, we can talk about that. And I do think that, yes, it's probably best to have a protracted conversation about this. But I do think that this is a good amendment. I want very much to send a message that the Monopoly money printer has to be turned off for the U to provide some restraint and an honest metric of success. So with that, thank you.
The clerk will take the roll on the A6 amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 58 ayes and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
McDonald moves to amend House File Number 2073, the second engrossment, as amended. The amendment is coded A7.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Wright, Representative McDonald, to explain the A7 amendment.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment takes the $3.4 million appropriated for the unemployment insurance aid and reappropriates it for the funding of law enforcement tuition relief grant program that incentivizes individuals to become peace officers. It's 1.9 million. And to fund teachers of color scholarships, $1.4 million. In committee, we heard proponents of the unemployment insurance bill that this was only a handful of jobs that were appropriated for this particular bill. So instead of spending $3.3 million for individuals, a very few individuals, to get unemployment during the summer months, when campuses generally have summer jobs available, we should give this money to programs that we know the money is needed, such as law enforcement, I'm sure you'll all agree, and grants for teachers of color scholarships. I'm sure you'll agree to that as well. According to the letter from the Minnesota Peace and Police Officers Association submitted in support of House File 863, Representative Wilgemott's bill, Minnesota is facing a critical shortage of police officers. And you all know what happens when we have a shortage of police officers. It's not good. According to a handout provided by Teachers of Color advocates, the ratio of BIPOC teachers in Minnesota to BIPOC students is 1.9. The ratio of white teachers to white students is 1.90 for BIPOC students, and the ratio of white teachers to white students is 1.9. This funding is better spent on increasing law enforcement officers and providing safe communities and increasing teachers of color to reflect student diversity in schools. Now, you will probably hear from the chairman, who, by the way, as you probably already know, is one wise chairman. The committee has been spent on grabbing the budgets and not letting them go, and he has done just that, and he's done a wonderful job on that. However, this is a friendly amendment, and I hope that my good friend will accept this amendment. But you will probably hear that particularly in his bill, there is an appropriation of funds that will help the officers' scholarships under the Minnesota State Workforce Development Scholarships. And that is true, and it's fantastic that the chair has included some of those fundings. However, there's a little glitch in that particular appropriation. It doesn't specifically get that money to students who want to go into law enforcement. So we believe that this particular amendment, taking the money away from the unemployment and put it in two very important elements. Police Officers Association for students that want to go and get grants for police officer and for students of color. So with that, I ask for a green vote and I request a roll call.
Representative McDonald requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, so there will be a roll call vote on the A7 amendment. Is there any further discussion to the A7 amendment? I recognize the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski.
Mr. Speaker and members, there are two problems with the McDonald amendment. And the first one is he takes the money from somewhere else, particularly the unemployment fund. We had testimony in committee how critical it is with worker shortages that we allow those individuals, and this is both at the University of Minnesota and Min State, that they be allowed to collect unemployment when the school is not in session. Secondly, he doesn't understand the bill covers or exceeds to cover the areas he wants to. I'm going to draw your attention to page 8 of the bill, and this deals with the money he would like to see go to teachers of color. Subdivision 25, grants to teachers, student teachers in shortages areas, $4 million. Subdivision 26, grant to underrepresented student teachers, $2,625,000. Subdivision 27, teacher shortage loan repayment, $3,200,000. We've not only taken the teachers of color seriously as a pilot program, we've expanded that program. But then he goes on to say that we didn't do anything for law enforcement. Specifically on page 46, line 46.20, we added the category under program eligibility eligibility for public safety. And we were sure to make that broad enough that it would include all elements of public safety. The flexibility in this bill will allow us over the interim hearings to see exactly how the Min-State system and other institutions are employing the money that we have in the workforce development and other areas. So members, I'm going to ask you to vote against the bill because we're already doing it better than the McDonald Amendment.
Further discussion to the A7 amendment. I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Wright, Representative McDonald.
Mr. Speaker, well, first of all, Representative Pelowski, I never said you're not doing anything for law enforcement, so that's wrong. So let's get that straight. I never said those words whatsoever. And the point of this school, the Minnesota State Workforce Development Scholarships, we increased the eligibility for those. Right now, that particular program funds advanced manufacturing, very important, agriculture, important, health care services, information technology, early childhood education, and transportation. And they're adding the police. So that's very important. We're fantastic. We're happy about that. But it doesn't specify that those grant dollars, up to $2,500, will go towards any students that are going to law enforcement. It's vague, it's not very transparent, and there's no guarantee whatsoever that those scholarships will be used for police force. So my amendment does very much specifically goes in and offers that grant money towards those who are going into the police department and law enforcement. Furthermore, the students of teachers of color, certainly it was a pilot project, what was it, 2 years ago? 2 years ago, I believe we passed it, but it's still not very effective. So although you continue to put more money in your bill, perhaps it's not enough, Representative Pelowski, because there's no evidence that is working. So by taking money away from the unemployment insurance, which, as you probably hadn't known, there's jobs galore out there. So anyone that is good, those good people that are working at those campuses that are unemployed for the summer, guess what? They'll probably find another job for just a few months. There's only a few people. And as a very important statement by Spock from Star Trek, if you don't know, he said, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. The needs of the many are those who need to go in law enforcement. The needs of the many are those who need to go into students of color for teaching. And the needs of the few are the unemployment insurance. They'll find another job. So I encourage a green vote.
The clerk will take the roll on the A7 amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 58 ayes and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is adopted. It's not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended.
Third reading, House File Number 2073, as amended.
Third reading as amended. Discussion to House File 2073. I recognize the member from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. First, I want to thank Chair Pelowski. I have told him this privately, but I'm going to tell all of you publicly. Higher Ed Committee was my happy place. Chair Pelowski, you dug into budgets and you did not let go, and I appreciate that. You brought perspective, you brought history, you brought the systems in and asked them hard questions. You encouraged us in the minority to ask hard questions. I could not be happier the fact that we spent so much time and so much energy on budget work. So for that, I just want to thank you. There are some components of this bill that are absolutely outstanding, and I just want to highlight some of those. One thing that you increased because it was going well, which is really exciting for me, is to hear that the Fostering Independence grants. So these are scholarship grants, they're grants for kids that are in foster care or had been in foster care. And you know, those are some of the most, the kids that have the most difficult time in life. And I'm so proud as a body and as a state that we have gathered our arms around them and said, we will help you, we will support you. And they're taking us up on that offer. So I appreciate that, and you've actually increased it 1.1 million. And we're spending a total of 8.6 million on making sure that kids that have been in foster care have grants to go to college. It's amazing, and thank you for that. I also am very excited to see that you've increased the funding for the dual training grants. And so one of the reasons is a little bit selfish, and I apologize for that part, but I actually worked across the aisle and bicamerally with then Senator Bonoff to create this program. It was patterned after some things that they were doing in Germany. It was an amazing kind of precedent setting here in Minnesota, and it is so successful that we're increasing it by 5.3 million to a total of 9.3 million. And that will really help our workforce. I know that the last jobs report I saw, we had 150,000 jobs that were open if every single person on unemployment got employed. So that's 150,000 jobs that are open, last report that I saw, with no one to fill them. So we need every single person possible in our workforce. And to that end, I'm also really excited to partner with Representative Keeler, and I'm sorry I can't see you across the aisle here if you're sitting over there because we've got a big desk between us, but I got to sit next to her as we presented the bill about O&M, so operations and maintenance funding for our tribal colleges. And part of the reason why I was so excited to stand with Representative Keeler and support the tribal colleges is because I grew up in Bagley. And if you know where Bagley is, you get a gold star for the day, because it's a little teeny tiny town in northern Minnesota, and my brother, Representative Daniels, and I grew up there. But all around us were the 3 tribal nations that are listed in this, and that's Leech Lake, White Earth, and Red Lake Nation tribal colleges. And for the first time, we are offering them and giving to them $1 million per year for O&M, and that will be transformative. And if Representative Keeler, if I've heard her say it once, I've heard her say it a million times, it will be transformative for those colleges. And why is that so important? Because we need each and every person in the workforce. And here's something interesting too. So the state attainment goal. So we have a goal for people to have education past high school. And here in Minnesota, the goal is 70%. So 70% of our population, we have a goal that we have passed high school, either certification, a 2-year college, 4-year college, something. Now, those of us that are white, that goal is we're already at 68%. For Native American people in this state, it is less than 30%. I believe it's at 29.5%. So anything that we can do to help them get education past high school, I'm 100% for. So I am very excited to see that, and thank you, Chair Pelowski, for including that. And I remember when I was sitting there with Representative Keeler, and you literally said in committee, this is one of our top priorities, I believe is what you said. So thank you for that. The other thing that I see in here that's incredibly important, because we want to put students first, is the change to the state grant program. So the element E, so the living and miscellaneous expense change, which is only $21 million, will be transformative for those students. So it increases from 109% of federal poverty guidelines to 115. That will really, really help people that are really struggling to get a little bit more towards their education. So thank you for those pieces. Those are, and there are many more, but I don't want to spend, the whole time talking about that. But there are many, many good provisions and exciting pieces within this bill. So I believe Chair Pelowski was at the very beginning when we started this conversation, he talked about how much we're increasing this bill. So it is $650 million over base this coming biennium, and then in the tails, $450 million. With a total spending of 4.16 billion. So 4.16 billion total, which is the third largest portion of our budget. It's a lot of money. It is a lot of money, and that is after HHS and K-12 education. So what's a little bit concerning to me is the fact that we're spending $650 million more, and yet we've had over the past 10 years a very large decrease in enrollment in our systems. So in the Min-State system, for example, we had a 28% decline in enrollment in the last 10 years, which accounts for 41,885 students less. And yet this bill is spending more. At the University of Minnesota total system, we have a 6% reduction in the number of students, and they've actually lost 3,600 students in the last 10 years. And just to put a punctuation on that, at the Morris campus alone, they saw a 45% drop in enrollment. 45% drop in enrollment in the University of Minnesota Morris in the last 10 years. That is unbelievable. And then Representative Robbins actually pointed out already the fact that when we look ahead, it doesn't get any better. So in 2025, we're actually looking at an enrollment cliff that we're going to fall off of due to low birth rates. So I know that Representative Robbins presented something that was a study to kind of right-size our systems. And I appreciate the fact that we're going to be talking about that in the higher ed interim hearings. I'm very excited to hear that, because we certainly do need to discuss that quite a bit. But when we look at the totality of all of the budget bills coming, and I serve on Ways and Means, and so I get to see them come through, and I get to see the budget resolution, and we're not only spending the entire surplus, we're spending money in the tails that we don't have, and there are tax increases. And this is a part of a larger budget that we simply can't afford, because we're giving nothing back to the people that paid it in. So I would encourage a no vote on this, and it's an awful lot of money. It does do some good things, but I'll be a no vote today. Thank you, Madam Speaker. We got to change up there, Madam Speaker and members.
The member from Anoka-Ramsey, Representative Engen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It sounds like a lot of really good work went into this bill. Sounds like a lot of innovative practices are going to be made possible through the dollars that we're allocating today. But we also heard some pretty staggering stats, that college enrollment is down 30%, that tuition is climbing, that salaries are increasing for presidents. Ask young Minnesotans what it is that they're seeing and why it is that they're not going to college. I can tell you what my brother-in-law would say. He would say, I'm not going to the U of M because it doesn't seem safe. And then he went to Tennessee. He would say that there isn't an adequate ROI for the degrees that are being serviced through these institutions. He didn't feel that. So we're about to allocate $4 billion to those same universities who are increasing tuition. But don't worry, because student loan debt might be forgiven. we're subsidizing a lower quality product. And that's only going to lead to more student loan debt. I hope that in the future we can take a more proactive approach and say, why is it that folks aren't attending those universities? Why is it that tuitions continue to increase, but yet enrollment is going down? It should be pretty simple. Thank you. Vote no.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And frankly, I'm disappointed. For over a decade, there have been people asking that we actually look at utilization, look at the systemic issues that we've got in our system, look at the fact that administration is growing at so much of a higher rate than anything else, so that we can have a good, competitive, and quality system. But it's, again, being ignored. We spend, since I've been here, billions of dollars on HEPA, on facilities, and we haven't looked to see the utilization. When I was on higher ed, I never got an answer on the utilization. Oh, we're looking at it. Today we heard we've got all this wonderful information. We heard it in committee. How long do we get this wonderful information without having a solution or an answer or an improvement? Yeah, data's great, but we have to actually look at it and figure out what needs to be done. This bill is not doing it.
The member from Sherburne, Representative Wagamont.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise to urge support for House File 2073. Madam Speaker, this bill is a game changer for St. Cloud State University, for St. Cloud Technical Community College, and for the colleges and universities all throughout the state of Minnesota. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, despite the fact that Minnesota, we pride ourselves as being an education state, years of disinvestment for higher education budgets have led to our colleges and universities to experience devastating declines in enrollment. And that has been the focus of our Higher Education Committee this year, the impact of budgets on enrollment. And I'm very proud that with a historic target of $650 million this biennium, $450 million the next biennium, we are going to change the game for higher education in Minnesota. We're changing the game for our students, the students of today. It's making college more affordable and accessible by saving our students a combined $75 million by fully funding a 2-year tuition freeze for the Minnesota state system. We're making textbooks more affordable by expanding the Z degree textbook program. And we're investing $26 million in student support services for more advisors, more social workers, more community resource connectors, mental health support staff, to make sure our students have not only the academic support they need, but the life support that they need to deal with the challenges that our students are facing. Madam Speaker, this is a game changer for our campuses and their long-term financial vitality. A combination of factors from fewer students paying tuition, again, decades of state disinvestments, and the COVID-19 pandemic have all combined to create severe structural deficits across the Min-State system. That's why I am so proud that we are providing one-time funding of $50 million to help our campuses address these deficits. Madam Speaker, this is going to save crucial jobs and programs. This is exactly what our campuses need at this time. The thing I'm the most proud is what this bill is going to do, not just for our students, not just for our campuses, but investing in the workforce for tomorrow. This is why this bill is a winner, is a game changer for all Minnesotans. Because as Chair Pelowski has mentioned, we're investing in scholarships that will go to students who are pursuing careers in high-demand jobs, such as public safety, agriculture, healthcare, early childhood education, transportation, and construction. We're building the skilled workforce today to fit Minnesota's workforce needs for tomorrow. So with that, Madam Speaker, I want to thank Chair Pelowski for his leadership. It's been an honor to serve as his vice chair. We grabbed him by the budgets, we didn't let go, and as a result, higher education in Minnesota is going to benefit for years to come. Thank you, Chair Pelowski. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I urge a green vote.
The member from Winona, the author of the bill, Representative Pelowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank Representative O'Neill for her comments about the committee and the committee's work on budgets. Because the key to the success of this bill is the difference between hearing bills and actually doing budgets. And Representative O'Neill's comments echo what perhaps was the greatest compliment given to this committee, and it was given by Representative Liz Olson, who chairs Ways and Means. Now, she may have been giving the compliment to the committee because we share committee administrators, Owen Worth, but she did tell the chair of higher education that she didn't understand the difference between hearing budgets and hearing bills until she saw the work of the Higher Education, Finance, and Policy Committee. And that's a great credit to the committee administrator, Owen Worth. This bill is needed now because we have a massive worker shortage. We need skilled workers. This bill reinvests in all levels of higher education for skilled workers. It also makes it accessible and affordable. But the success of the bill will determine whether or not, if you hear budgets or if you hear bills. And I think if you hear budgets, you produce a bill that's going to make significant change. I encourage the members to vote for the bill.
The member from Stearns, Minority Leader, Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, we've heard on the higher ed bill a lot both ways on it, just knowing that we need to invest in our students. That is our responsibility. And to Chair Pelowski and to Lead O'Neill, thank you for your work as you've worked together and brought this forward. We do know that we have to invest in higher ed to ensure that our students are receiving the best access to education. And we need to ensure that we are making the right investments in the right places. Keeping students first is our responsibility, but also holding our institutions accountable is what is expected. We have to ensure that our state resources are going to our students. Continuing to increase the spending without acknowledging and adjusting for the declining enrollment is not fiscally responsible. With that, members, I would encourage a no vote today on this bill.
Further discussion, House File 2073. I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our state's colleges and universities have opened the doors of opportunity for countless Minnesotans and continue to do so today. All Minnesotans deserve opportunities to pursue their passions and achieve their dreams. I'm going to tell two quick stories about individuals who've done so through our college and university system. One is Justin Ramin from Gilbert, a 2019 graduate of Minnesota North College in Ely. After a few semesters, Justin did not have a clear career direction, but that changed after one conversation with Water Resources Program Manager Wade Klingsporn. Justin says that Wade helped him identify a clear career path by focusing his studies on water quality. And Justin is currently employed by the Public Works Department of the City of Gilbert. He said he's amazed that there's so many different ways to get involved in the industry, including water operations, lab work, hydrant testing. And Justin says he's happy in Gilbert, and the best part of his job is knowing he helps provide clean, fresh water to local residents. Or the story of Mohammed Ahmed Mohammed, who's lived in the nitty-gritty granite city of St. Cloud for 13 years. When the Electrolux plant closed, about 750 employees, including Mohammed, had limited options: find another job or change careers. He decided he needed a degree, and Mohammed worked with Career Solutions, a co-located partner with St. Cloud Technical and Community College, to learn about programs at the college. He chose the medium-heavy truck program because of his past experience with mechanical work, and he graduated last year. He's a family guy with a wife and 6 kids, and his immediate goal was getting a better job with a long-term goal of opening his own shop. Stories like these show how difficult it is to quantify the benefits of our higher education institutions, but they help us understand the positive impact that a post-secondary degree or training can have on people and their entire communities. Minnesotans value our state colleges and universities. They value our education system here in our state. Funding our higher education institutions transforms lives and communities for the better. Do we have more work to do to make post-secondary education more affordable and attainable for all Minnesotans? Absolutely. But we'll never achieve the goal if we starve our state colleges and universities, as some of the members on the minority are proposing. Members, let's vote green on this budget bill and send the message that we value our higher education institutions and the many benefits they provide to the state. Thank you.
The clerk will take the roll on House File 2073. The clerk will close the roll. There being 69 ayes and 58 nays, the bill is passed as amended in its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 1126. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 1126, number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to higher education, the first engrossment.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski, to explain the bill. Representative Pelowski. I recognize Representative Pelowski to explain House File 1126.
Sorry, I was distracted by the Chair of Transportation. This is the Higher Education Office technical bill. It has, as far as I know, no or nothing in it that anyone would complain about. It does have the definition of the tribal colleges in it, which is needed for the money that we just passed in the appropriation bill. I know of no opposition, Mr. Speaker, so I would encourage everyone to vote for the bill.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 1126.
Third reading. Discussion House File 1126. I recognize the member from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Thank you, Chair Pelowski. This is the OHE policy bill. It's very technical and clarifying language, and I would encourage everyone to vote yes.
Any further discussion to House File 1126? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on House File 1126. Oh, okay. All right, great. And then The clerk will close the roll. There being 127 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Without objection, we will revert to reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business is on your desk and online. If there is no objection, the report will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk, and they're available online. If there is no objection, we will take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail. Announcements. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Feist.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to remind folks that the Civility Caucus will be having a happy hour at Burger Moe's, which is very close. We've rented out the patio, and it's going to be very fun, and you should all come. Thank you.
Are there any further announcements? I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Mr. Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 12:30 p.m., April 13th, 2023.
Representative Long moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 12:30 p.m., Thursday, April 13th, 2023. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The motion prevails. Representative Long.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Long moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails and the House stands adjourned until 12:30 p.m. Thursday, April 13th, 2023.